For more and more entrepreneurs today, they're turning to podcasting as a consistent and reliable revenue stream. Approximately 33% of today's business owners, according to LinkedIn, consider podcasting as a primary way of building their business brand. It's becoming so popular that 31% of entrepreneurs today launch a podcast within their first year of business, according to my friends over at LinkedIn. On the other end of the spectrum, currently, approximately only 27% of B2B business marketers use podcasting comparatively to 78% of businesses who use podcasting to grow their bottom line say that it's met or exceeded their return on investment expectations, often contributing as a key engagement tool. Meanwhile, my friends over at Adobe say that the adoption rates of business owners who view podcasting as a top content priority stand at about a quarter of 25% of business owners today. This is all good news for my friend Kimberly Spencer. She is the visionary creator and owner of Crown Yourself and the CEO of Communication Queens. She's a certified high-performance business coach and visibility strategist, international TEDx speaker, and the best-selling author of the multiple award-winning book, Make Every Podcast Want You, How to Become Radically Interesting. You'll barely keep from interviewing yourself. It was named one of the top books to change your life back in 2024. She describes herself as a warrior for infinite human possibility and capability. And she joined me this week to have a wide-ranging and in-depth conversation about visibility, podcasting, parenting, life, and everything in between, and how to become a successful entrepreneur using podcasting at the heart of your success. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn how you help leaders become better communicators. It's great to see you, and happy Wednesday to you, my friend.
Happy Wednesday to you, Kevin. It's great to be here. Let's have this conversation, shall we?
Absolutely. So, Kim, I know that you work with executive leaders to help them become better communicators and leverage podcasts as a way to grow their brand, my friend. So tell me, how do we make leaders better internal and external communicators, and what makes you so fabulous, my friend?
I love the power of a paradigm shift where one moment you see something one way, and then another moment it's like you see something completely different in a completely different perspective and paradigm. And that is the power of strong communication, is you can deliver insight, which is more valuable than stacking on value. So I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of entrepreneurs are always wondering like, oh, I need to add more value. I need to add more. I need to give more. I need to educate more. I need to share all that I've learned. And I'm like, no, actually, you just need to be able to shift more paradigms and perspectives, because the power of being able to move someone from a place of fear to a place of faith, or from a place of impossible to possible, or from a place of stuck to like successful and moving forward, that's immense power. And I think why I love and leverage podcasting is because it's one of the easiest and most accessible mediums to practice and get in your reps, because a lot of people have dreams of keynotes and big stages and making bigger impact and all that. And that's fine. I just think you also have to practice and get in your reps, which means like the top leaders and speakers you see now, they started in a conference room of a few people that they hoped and prayed would sign up for their seminar. Like it wasn't 2,000 people immediately overnight. And it's very often for us to compare, like I'm a marathon runner. And as a marathon runner, when I start running, I know that I got to run mile 1 in order to get to mile 2, in order to get to mile 3, in order to get to mile 4, and so on and so forth until 26. But I'm not comparing myself at mile 4 to somebody else at mile 20. Like, yeah, they run faster. So what? If I keep going, I'm going to succeed too. But we very much in the online space, especially in thought leadership, so many people compare their mile 4 to somebody else's mile 20 who's been doing this for a decade. Like I had a client of mine who was working for with a TEDx speaker coach to like train her to be a TEDx speaker. And she called me up and she's like, I don't like this coach. And I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, Kim, you did your TED talk in 3 weeks. Like how difficult could it be for me to do the same? And I said, I looked at her and I was like, transparently, have you done 25 years of performances? Because my background started in musical theater, in stage performance, in giving speeches. I was giving speeches in 4th grade. I was competing in beauty pageants and, you know, having to have that embarrassing question of like standing up in front of thousands of people and having a question, answer this one random question on something that you have no idea to, and yet you have to formulate an answer within 90 seconds. And at a stage in your life, like I was 15 at the time, and you don't really know who you are. And going through all of those awkward moments and sucking and not and having the small rooms and performing to literal, like there were times I was in performance improv for a few years when I was in my teen years. And there were a few times where we were performing to literally 1 or 2 people in an audience. And we still had to deliver the same performance as if we were at the LA Improv, which we performed at as well, performing to an audience of, 20, 30, 50 people. And being able to have that confidence and have those confidence hits and those ego hits, quite frankly, where your ego says, well, I should be up on stage in front of 1,000. Yet so many people, when they give their first keynote, like they trip. If you were to give the opportunity of somebody speaking on stage or going on a podcast that has thousands and thousands of downloads, so many people freeze. There's a reason why public speaking is more feared than death. And it's, because we face all of us. We face our rejection. We face our fears of judgment. We face all of our shadows. And it's what I work with leaders is to rewire those subconscious stories about rejection, about judgment, about what people think and how people are thinking of you when you walk in the room, and what Sally said over here about your speech and this, or how you showed up on this podcast, and how to interpret that or how to alchemize that. And it's those stories that we tell ourselves that often are not true, and that actually allow us to keep playing small and in our comfort zone. And I just think at this stage of the world, like we need big leaders with big hearts that are choosing to take big, bold steps of courage. And if I can play a small piece in that work to be able to get their voices out there, whether on podcasts or on stages, like I am more than happy to play that role.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you bring up the concept of rejection professionally. And, as a speaker or no matter what profession you enter into as an adult, you'll face rejection. So how do you think we can learn authentically from rejection in order to grow? I'm curious to get your answer there, my friend.
Well, in order to face rejection, you have to have the belief that somebody can reject you. So, which means that there's a part of yourself that you have rejected, because everything is a reflection of you. And I live by a very simple principle that which is conscious manifests happily, and that which is unconscious manifests unhappily. And there is a principle in NLP, and I'm a master NLP mindset coach, and I have been doing this work for a decade. And there's a principle of perception is projection. And so when you think through the principle of that which is conscious manifests happily and that which is unconscious manifests unhappily, if, for example, someone delivers a rejection or a judgment of you, because ultimately a rejection is a judgment of you, there's a part of you that believes it's true. Because, for example, if I were to say, that's an ugly pink shirt, and you aren't wearing a pink shirt, you'd be like, well, that's dumb. That's a dumb judgment. Like, I'm not even wearing pink. But if all your life you had been programmed, trained to believe that pink was actually that black was actually pink, and you're wearing a pink shirt, and you thought that pink that black shirt that's really black was actually pink, and I said that's an ugly pink shirt, then there would be some resonance of truth to that against your own belief system. So when we face rejection or when we face judgment, we have to look at what part of this do we believe is actually true. And that's where we actually get to have healing with society, in essence, being our mirror, being holding the mirror up to our own shadows. And we get to see, oh, is this something that's still a part of me? Is this a part of me that I've rejected? Maybe my fear of being too much. Like, for example, I had a client years ago who was canceling a contract. And he was much more successful than me, like had made much more money than me. And he was older than me. So in my mind, he was farther along. And in order to cancel this contract, like technically he wasn't supposed to be canceling because it was in our terms of our agreement. But he said something of like, well, I understand you're just a mom with a side hustle. And sometimes these things get too big and out of control. And I was like, huh. And it was really crazy because that stung. That stung me so hard. And I sat with it. I was like, why does this hurt? And because I've been in the top 11% of female-owned businesses running a six-figure business for the past 5 years since 2020. Or 6 years now. And so I was like, why does this sting? Like, why does this hurt? And I messaged a few of my girlfriends and they were like, well, what part of you believes this is true? And I was thinking, I had to really sit with that. And I said, you're right. He's absolutely right. I am a mom first, 100%. As you just experienced, my 4-year-old came downstairs during this podcast interview. He was sobbing because his stuffed animals got moved. And I said, hold on, let me just take care of this and make sure that he is okay. And I'll be right back. And it took me 4 minutes and I came back and here we are. But that is me putting my family first. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, that's not something I need to apologize for. Like, that's just a value system. But the way that it was framed was hurtful because it was framed in a way that made me feel diminished and like I wasn't as successful. And it was true. Like, a part of it was like, well, he's right. Like, I haven't made as much money as he had in essence, if that was what I was inferring into that conversation. Because, and that was my own shame being reflected. And I was like, but what else have I built? I've been able to sustain a wonderful, amazing dream life with my kids and have a business and have impact and make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, that's amazing that I get to do that. And that's such a privilege. So it was me having to, that judgment and that rejection of was only me rejecting the side that that wasn't enough, that I hadn't succeeded enough. And it came back to that enoughness belief when really when I had the moment to just actually call BS on that and say like, wow, I've done incredibly well for myself as a woman, as a business owner, and as a mother. And I'm really proud of myself for that. And I don't need to shame myself that I'm not farther along than some dude. Like I can be okay with where I'm at and also honor that, yeah, there's still space that I want to grow. Like, definitely, do I want to have my $1 million a year? Yeah. Has it happened yet? No. But I know that it is. I know that it will. I know that it is happening. So it's just about who do I need to become to make that happen then? Instead of having the shame and guilt of like, oh, I should have done this and I should be farther along. Like, all of that comment was just reflected in a whole bunch of shoulds that I had in myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Kimberly, I also wanted to ask you about the importance of, the vision aligning with a business message so that you can attract 10 times more attention, my friend. What do you think is the linkage between a business message, a vision, and attracting more attention? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, having coached 6, 7, and 8-figure business leaders for the past decade, I can definitely say that I have seen a direct correlation between the amount of time that a business owner, a founder, a CEO sits in the visionary seat to the amount of income that the business is making. And myself included, I sit a lot of times in the delivery seat because I love delivering one-on-one coaching. It's not scalable. I get that, but I also love it, and I'm okay with that. But the vision is, and being able to see that vision and market to that vision and express that vision. Like, you look at a true visionary like Steve Jobs, he was able to mass market and create waves and shifts in technology that we are still feeling today because he led with vision. And that message trickled into every area of the product design. It trickled into the messaging, the ad campaigns. Every ounce of it was a part of that visionary statement, that visionary who was leading that charge. And so often, though, I see us, because we have been conditioned as to be employees, quite frankly, from like the traditional education system was built for an employee market to make better workers. It was established in the Victorian age. Like, that's what it was built for. So we have been trained to think that we need to be doers, not thinkers. And that if you're spending time thinking and strategizing, that actually is like you're not actually doing your job, versus actually those who are paid the highest, like those who elevate the company the most, are the visionaries. Like, they can 10x a quantum leap in the company, in revenue, by choosing to move themselves from the doer seat in delivery into the visionary seat. And like that's the big shift that I'm personally making this year in shifting my role. Yes, I still have one-on-one clients and I still work with delivery, but in shifting my own role to be more in that visionary seat, because I've seen what it does when my clients have done it. And I'm like, well, I might as well just do it myself.
Well, if it isn't broke, don't fix it, right?
Right? Like, success leaves clues, so just follow those.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kimberly, I also wanted your perspective on strategies that business owners and entrepreneurs can establish in order to make sure that they can prevent, complacency regarding their brand visibility once they get established, my friend. What's the key to making sure you don't get bored when it comes to brand visibility and you don't get too complacent? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
So complacency with brand visibility really comes from being good, not choosing to be great, not choosing to be present with the message, not choosing to even be present with the person. It comes from being good and resting on your laurels, which is a fast slide into actual like issues with the business. Because I'm sure you've heard it said you're either growing or you're dying. And if you're resting in complacency and you're letting your visibility, it was what it was, or you're showing up on podcasts and you're like, well, I've told this story 50 million times, or I've said this 50 million times and everybody's heard this, then what happens is that your presence dulls. Like imagine if I came on, and I teach the principle time and time again of that which is conscious manifests happily and that which is unconscious manifests unhappily. I have said that pretty much on every podcast I have been on for the past 2.5 years. And that being said, I still say it with presence, with excitement, with verve, with vigor, with conviction, because I deeply believe it. And I have seen the impact of what doing that and living that through that principle actually provides for life. And yet, if I were to come on this podcast and say, yeah, well, there's a principle that I live by that's that which is conscious manifests happily and that which is unconscious manifests unhappily. And this principle is really valuable to up-leveling your life. And if you just adopt it, like you're going to see a lot of results. Would you even want to like lean in? Would you want to engage? Like there's no vitality in my voice. There's no presence in my posture. There's no energy backing it. And I have to say the highest form of compliment that I have ever gotten, and I get it consistently enough to like share it without being like braggadocio, is like, I love your energy. And I'm like, that's the feedback that you want, because as a leader, people follow energy. People can feel energy. You feel energy when you see someone walking down the street and you're like, I don't know, a little shifty. Like we feel energy that has presence, that has vigor and vitality. That is magnetic. That attracts people to your cause. That attracts people to your business. That's why I've generated over $250,000 from podcast guesting alone in new business revenue. Like that is powerful because you're bringing full presence to that moment. You're trying to like, whether you've done it 1,000,000 times. I think one of my favorite quotes is from Bruce Lee, who's like, I don't fear the man who knows 10,000 tricks. I fear the man who's practiced one, kick 10,000 times. Because that repetition has the level of mastery. And we do have to master our energy, quite frankly, especially in this day and age when we can be so easily prone to distraction and circumstances and global conflicts and economic conflicts and kids and like school schedules and all the things. There are so many things that can distract us and pull us away from truly being present in the moment. But I think that if we were to have reverence for people and care a bit more for humanity and recognize that, like, I get to sit with Kevin McShann. And I have never met Kevin McShann until this moment, but I have the privilege and the honor of getting to sit with him and be with another human who is interested in having a deep philosophical, embodied conversation on growth and development. Like, I'm excited to do that. And I honor the fact that we're coming to this conversation together. That's why, I think especially with visibility, specifically podcast guesting, when you do podcast guesting and when we've seen with clients it not pay off, it does come with them phoning it in. It does come with them saying the same thing, like they've said it 1,000,000 times and they're just going to keep saying the same thing. And it also comes from them not really having reverence for the other person, for the fact that, like, you, Kevin, have never heard me say this probably, unless you've gone back and like deeply researched me and gone on other listened to my other podcast interviews. But for the most part, like, this is our first time meeting. Mm-hmm. And this is a privilege to sit across from another human, like to be able to have the honor of having someone else's time in a world where they could be anywhere else, but they chose to be here with you. That's an honor. And I think when we start to have reverence and respect for people, this world would change with just a little bit more presence, with a little bit more reverence, and with a little bit more hope for possibility of what could come. Like, I don't know what could come from this. Like, maybe a client comes from listening to this podcast. Maybe Kevin and I form an affiliate relationship where we're able to like cross promote and share, resources to each other. Like, I don't know what's going to come of this. But if I were to have the hubris and the pride to come and say, well, like, oh, he probably knows this, or, oh, I've said this a million times, that's being selfish. That's not actually truly being of service. And I think what we need more of in this world, and this is just my philosophy, I think we need more good-hearted, conscious humans who bring presence, energy, and a heart of service to really lead the way in these times. My sneeze agrees.
Bless you, absolutely. So, Kim, I wanted to ask you about, resilience and inclusion. And before I ask you the question, I'll give you a story. So, Kim, I was born with spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. And at the age of 9, I was told by a doctor that I would never walk normally because of the severity of my disability. And when I graduated college, so I originally graduated college with a journalism degree, and I went on 10 consecutive job interviews. And when they were finished, news directors would look at me at the time and say, "You're qualified, but because of your disability, we view you as a liability." So that sort of spawned me into becoming a speaker because no one would hire me because of my disability. So I had to make money. So I'm curious to ask you about resilience and inclusion and how we can make resilience a part of our economic story, because it worked for me. So I wanted your opinion on how we can use resilience as an economic indicator and revenue driver. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, first of all, Kevin, I think you're amazing. I think that like I'm so inspired by you to just show up and create the platform and do the thing for yourself and build something for yourself because it wasn't the system wasn't built for you. And I so honor the fact, like I have first and foremost, like I have so much respect for you because I hear so many things from leaders who are like, well, I'm scared of saying the wrong thing, or I don't like my accent. And I'm like, here's Kevin with cerebral palsy who just is still showing up regardless and serving and has a servant's heart. Like that's amazing. So I want to congratulate you first and foremost, because I think that that's extraordinary that you chose to just build the platform and do it yourself. Way to go.
Well, thank you.
And to answer your question about resiliency, from my experience, I think that we can really learn from people who are different than us. And I personally, I love diversity. I think this world would be so boring if we all thought the same, looked the same, did the same. Like we would just be robots, and we're already going to get robots. So I don't think we need more robots. I think the beauty of humanity is how beautiful we are in our differences. And that I personally believe that God, source, universe, the creator created us exactly as we are with exactly what we're supposed to be, like with a mission that only we can fulfill with the exact remedy of how we're to fulfill it. And I too had to wrestle with, not myself personally, but one of my children, with the belief system of a diagnosis is not a death sentence, nor is it in any way disable him from being able to do anything that he wants to set his mind to. And I personally told those doctors who looked at me with shame and like sadness and like, oh, woe is me, and looked at them with a level of F you, like, don't you tell me who my kid can be, and watch me, like, watch him shine. There was a great study done of children back in, several years ago. But they took a teacher and they had a classroom of kids, and they took a teacher and they told this teacher, and they said, look, this class is the worst. They are unfocused. They are disorganized. I really think they're dumb. Like they are behind in every subject. Like you're going to really struggle with them. And that teacher went in, taught, and the kids were failing miserably. Fast forward, they took another teacher. They said, this classroom, same classroom, all they changed was the information given to the teacher. This classroom are brilliant. You're going to struggle to catch up with them. They are geniuses. They are so smart. They are so witty and wise, and they catch on so quick. You're going to struggle like with keeping up with them because they're so smart. Suddenly, magically, that teacher went in, and those kids, the same kids, their grades accelerated. Mm-hmm. They suddenly had possibility. So it all is, we need to see through the lens of possibility, not the checklists of all the things that could go wrong. And I think, and I understand with liabilities and legal and all the things in a highly litigious society, especially like I come from California, which is like one of the most litigious states in the world. But that ability to see the possibility that just like somebody who may have, quote, a disability may actually be more able to connect or to deliver or to serve in a way that the people without that disability aren't able to do. And when we can look at people who are different than us through the lens of that lens of possibility, we open up worlds of hope and opportunities for others. And though I do think like nothing happens for no reason, like what you're doing, Kevin, is you are literally that testimony for other kids with cerebral palsy who have been told the same thing. And yet here you are getting to lead the way. And when I have my conference, I would love to have you on stage with me.
Absolutely. I'd love to do it, my friend. And I'm wanting your opinion on, building new brands, because, for people that want to fall into entrepreneurship, it's not for everyone.
It's not.
And I don't have to tell you, but I'll give you some statistical data about it. Our friends over at Constant Contact that is starting back in 2024 that revealed that 73% of small business owners lack confidence in communicating their message to the public because they don't have a clear lane when it comes to clearly communicating their value proposition or the value they bring to the world, to the marketplace. So I'm curious to ask you about your thoughts on those findings, my friend, and then secondarily, your recommendations for new businesses as they look to establish brand visibility. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Okay, so I'll start first with the messaging. Your messaging is meant to evolve as your business evolves. Your values will set the framework for your company of what your business values. Those are like what I say, all your castle walls. Your brand message and your ideal client will evolve. My ideal client who I used to serve a decade ago is no longer my ideal client. Do I still love them? Are they still in my world? Absolutely. But for the most part, they're not still my client. They've evolved, they've changed. I've changed. I've gone in different directions. So your brand message is allowed to evolve as your processes refine. And it's a process of refinement and of chipping away. It's kind of like Michelangelo sculpting the David. Like it takes time to refine, to smooth things out, to figure it out. And the only way you do it is not by taking multiple courses or certifications on how to refine and do the things. The only way you do it is through actual interaction with potential customers. And that's why, to any new business owner who's just starting out and wanting to get visible, I would say you're focusing on the wrong thing. Stop focusing on visibility and only focus on sales, because the sales, like visibility, like it's very easy to get distracted by visibility, by posting on Instagram, by going on podcasts. I reference in my book, Make Every Podcast Want You, how there was a story of a client who came to us at Communication Queens, my other company, and where we have a consulting agency. We match them with the right podcasters. We help them build out their visibility ecosystem. And she came to us and she was like, I'm just curious, why do I need you if I've gone on 40 podcast interviews this past month? And I was like, awesome, congratulations. Did any of those convert into clients or referrals or any sort of money for your business? And she looked at me blank, like I had just spoken French. And she was like, what do you mean convert? I said, well, those are all visibility opportunities. Those are lead generation opportunities that lead to a conversion. Ideally, how you're attracting is somehow leading to conversion. And she was like, she never even thought of it. She'd been posting, she had been going on podcasts, she'd been getting visible, but she hadn't had a clear funnel in order to get people into her products and services. It was just a hope and a prayer and her talking about what she liked to talk about, which is why we say at Communication Queens, like, brand awareness is BS without sales, because you can't pay the bills with brand awareness. You can pay the bills when your customers give you money. So we have to look at the first thing. And there's an acronym that I love, and I cannot take credit for this acronym. This acronym was from Mike Malkowitz in his book Clockwork, and it's AC/DC. And I remember it because it's one of my favorite bands. So it's super easy to remember because I just think of AC/DC. And then I think of Thunderstruck because I live here in Texas, and I think of the Dallas Cowgirl Cheerleaders and how I aspire to have a body like them. So AC/DC stands for attract, convert, deliver, and collect. That's it. Those are the 4 things that you need to worry about in a business. It's not your Instagram. It's not posting more on social. It's not getting more visible. It is, how do you attract and how do you convert? And when you think of visibility, you have to be thinking of it through the lens of, how am I attracting to convert? So it's not, and attracting can be as simple as sending a friend a DM and saying, hey, I started this business. I'm looking for 3 clients to test out my framework. Would you be willing to refer someone to me who could be a potential client to test out this framework on relationship coaching? And they may have a referral, they may not, but they may say, oh, I'm actually struggling with my relationship. Could maybe me. Okay, great. Awesome. So it takes practice, but you have to put yourself out there. And I call it the power of the ask. Like, you have to make the power of the ask for the conversion, ask for the sale, ask for the referral. Otherwise, people aren't, they're too busy with their lives doing what they're doing to know, oh, I should do this for you. Like, nobody's like, I guarantee you, even my clients who have loved me, who have gone on to double their best months, who are like, have bought planes, like, even those amazing client success stories, I guarantee you, probably right now at this very moment, they're not thinking, how do I generate more business for Kimberly? They're not thinking, who should I refer to her? No, they're gonna know to refer because I literally send them an email and say, hey, I have 2 spots open for a private client for a 12-month stint. Do you know anyone in your world who is at this criteria who would be a fit for this? And they could say yes, or they could say no. But then because of the ask, their subconscious mind goes on a quest, and maybe they bump into someone in a week, or maybe they don't bump into someone, but at least that ask is out there. And by putting that ask out there clearly and specifically for the purpose of a conversion, that actually creates a ripple effect and results in your business. Visibility for visibility's sake creates more noise.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if you can reflect on your own business journey, because I know that it's been quite the ride for you from selling. They tell me that you've sold glitter bags and also became a successful screenwriter and an award-winning screenwriter, and you've even done everything from being certified in Pilates, my friend, and being Miss Congeniality, my friend. So I'm wondering your thoughts on your own business trajectory and the philosophy of sort of carving your own path, because we've talked a lot about that today. But I'm wondering, when you reflect on your own business journey, what's your most proud business and entrepreneurial accomplishment, my friend?
Well, my most proud accomplishment would be raising a business and babies at the same time and doing it. Like, that's such an honor. And I used to compare myself to women who started their coaching businesses when I did in 2015, 2016. Like, I started mine in 2015, and then I really turned pro, as I say, in 2016 and actually started making money. But I used to compare myself to women who were building and scaling without having children. It's such a difference to do it as a mother. Like, there's so much more responsibility. There's both, for the life of, the child, and for yourself and for the business. But like, that would be my greatest success. Like, my path to success has not been linear. And I truly feel like I'm just getting started, even though I've been 17 years as an entrepreneur. I started out as a freelance Pilates instructor to support myself in my burgeoning screenwriting career. I'd won a couple awards for some screenplays, not like Academy Awards or the Emmys or anything like that, but like low, indie screenwriter awards. And I was like, okay, I'm on my way. Got my first feature film picked up, distributed. I co-wrote it with the director. It got picked up by Lionsgate. Netflix picked it up. Like, it was amazing. And it left me not fully fulfilled. And I wondered why. And I realized when I really took a step back that, like, I like being a screenwriter, but being a screenwriter, you're basically the architect of the movie. You're not actually the director. You're not actually directing the picture, and or the producer. And I was like, I actually want to be the producer. I want to be the producer. I want to be the director. I want to be the performer. And I found entrepreneurship in that way. I ended up starting my own private Pilates studio in order to support myself, called Fitness with Kim in Burbank, California. And then from that experience teaching Pilates, I was able, after my film was produced and distributed, I had an opportunity to come on board as a consultant for an e-com product. They were selling a back stretching device, and I saw it and I said, oh my God, I could see this in every Pilates studio across the country. And I saw the product and I said, I don't want to be a consultant. I want to be a partner in this. I want to help run this company and scale this. And so I became president of that e-com company at 24. Oh, so young. And for 2 years, we grew that business and got it into every major magazine. And we were in talks with getting some angel investors, and I'd pitched it to the first round of Shark Tank auditions. But it turns out, like, I was very immature in that business. And I also just didn't listen to my intuition in some certain things when it came to some choices, and struggled with finding my voice again with a partner who was much older and had achieved success in a different area of life. He wasn't an entrepreneur prior to, but I exited that company. We signed the buyout agreement 3 weeks before I got married. I I jetted off on my honeymoon and I was like, what do I do when I get back? And that was when I really sat with it, because I had 6 weeks on the coast of Italy, which is not a bad way to, brainstorm on your next company.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there with my husband in this like little Airbnb, and it was just beautiful and over way too many espressos. Was just thinking, I used to be in beauty pageants and I loved writing and I loved being an entrepreneur. And I'm a second generation entrepreneur. Like, that's why I was selling bags of glitter water. Like, I see it in my kids. Like, they're selling eggs door to door, like knocking on neighbors' doors and asking if they want to buy our chicken eggs. Like, they are hustling for the dollar. And I support that. Like, I'm fully happy to give up a few hours on my Saturday so they can make their sales and earn some money and have the honor of earning money. Like, it's really fun to see them love being able to see how they can make money out of nothing. Like, they literally had an idea. Okay, let's execute it. Okay, let's go. And let's ask people. It takes so much courage. But so then I pivoted, and I while I was there in the Airbnb with my husband, as we're brainstorming, I just had this divine download where I leaped off the couch and I said, crown yourself. And my husband goes, what's that? And I said, that's the name of my company. He said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, something like Marie Forleo. And he was like, okay. And so for a year, though, I was in business, but not really in business. I used to say I made $0 for a year and a half. I actually only made $115, but I think $15 of that was my own split testing on my own product. Not quite sure on that. Can't confirm that. But I know I did make $100 in coaching at $25 an hour. So, which is super low and not my current rates at all, ever again. Right? No, not when you're coaching 8-figure leaders. They would laugh. But being able to go from that, it was actually my son, finding out that I was pregnant with my son, that catapulted me into realizing that I had spent a year and a half working on all the surface level visibility things that made my business look good, the photo shoot, the website, even the trademark, even the logo design, even, the Instagram and all that. But my business had made $115. So it wasn't actually in business. And I'd spent the past year and a half complaining, blaming, and shaming my former business partner and my exit for my results and for, traumatizing me and all this. And I was like, I just got over my own stuff. And it was then that I got certified. And I knew that every problem that I was facing was not really a financial or a business problem. It was a mindset problem. So I went off and I got certified in NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis. I then started scaling and growing my coaching business and was starting out privately one-on-one. And then by 2018, we had 9 courses that I created in 1 year and 1 membership. And then from there, like by 2018, I'd replaced my husband's income, and suddenly I was the breadwinner, and that was really exciting and fun. And so as we say in my household, like I bring home the bacon and my husband fries it up. And then in 2020, when we got stuck in Australia during COVID, we ended up staying there, and my business was responsible for our family because my husband's income in his industry of voiceover, like, it was gone. And so we had to just rely on my company. And my husband looked at me and said, do you think you can handle it? And I was like, absolutely. We got this. And that was when I found podcast guesting, because I saw the power of podcast guesting for connecting and building one-on-one business relationships. And whether that relationship turns into a client-customer relationship, or that relationship turns into a referral relationship, or that relationship just turns into staying in each other's ecosystems, cheering each other on, seeing, having our followers, our fans, our connections see each other in those spaces. All of that adds up to visibility that can translate into clients and customers. And within 50 podcast interviews, I generated $70,000 of new business revenue, which is like 10 times harder to generate than like converting existing customers. And then fast forward very quickly, a couple years later, it was already up to $250,000. Now it's over that in new business revenue just for coaching. And that's the power of going on a podcast. But it happens when you're not treating a podcast host like a piece of meat, like you're hoping to get a client out of them. And it happens also when you're treating the podcast interview like a first date, in essence, to see where the business relationship could lead. As I joke very tongue in cheek, a lot of people treat a podcast interview like a visibility one night stand, where it's like you see each other and then like bye, and then maybe you'll promote it, maybe you'll tell your girlfriends about it, but most often a lot of people just don't talk about it. Yeah. And I think there's so much power when we can, again, it goes back to honor and reverence for the person who's just giving you like 30 minutes to an hour of their time out of their precious day to have a connection and a one-on-one conversation. And that can lead to so much more business and referrals when you look at the possibility of infinite possibilities rather than treating relationships as just transactional.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to ask you about your two podcasts because I know that they've received awards and you've been successful in doing that. And, I have to tell you a little story. So I started this podcast right in the midst of COVID, and I wish I was with you in Australia, but that's okay. Because I looked at the world and first of all, I told myself in COVID that there was only so much Netflix I could watch in a day, right? So, and I wanted to sort of spread my journalistic wings. Anyway, I have now created a podcast that's lasted 6 years, and over the 6 years, I've recorded over 1,100 episodes.
Wow, more than me.
So it's
Kevin, you got me beat.
It's either a labor of love or insanity, one of the two. But I'm wanting to ask you about, because I know that your podcast is similar to mine in the fact that you want to create meaningful dialogue that moves the conversation of progress forward. And how do you think business owners can leverage podcasts and actually treat it as a business opportunity? And I know that you touched on it briefly on your last answer, but I wanted you to wove it into your own podcast and why it's been a successful medium for you, my friend.
Yeah, so our first podcast, Crown Yourself, we started that in 2019, and back then it was called The Princess and the Bee. And eventually I was like, well, I own the trademark for Crown Yourself, so it's very silly to not call it my business name. And so with Crown Yourself, we decided to pivot and call it Crown Yourself in 2021, 2022, and call it the Crown Yourself podcast. From there, what we did was that podcast we found was really great for bringing on mentors and people that I only wished I could have conversations with. That you know how you're like, I wish I could pick that person's brain. Guess what? If you have your own podcast and you have a sizable enough audience, they will come on your show, and you can grow so fast with free mentorship. Aside from the cost of labor of production of your podcast, you can grow so much from free mentorship from just producing your podcast. Like, it's unreal how fast you can grow from personally and business wise. For example, my friend Tirza Shirai, she came on my podcast back in 2019. Back then, she scaled her business from 0 to 30 million in 5 years. Back then, she was my mentor. I was like, teach me your ways. And she referred to me to 2 books, Traction and the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, and Transcendental Meditation. I said, if you did that, I'm going to do what you did. I'm going to do Transcendental Meditation. I'm going to implement Traction, and I'm going to study the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. All of those I did. In 2020, we hit our 6-figure year and then some. And there is so much power that you can have when you have mentorship and guidance. And if you were to just say, hey, can I pick your brain for an hour and give you nothing in return? Most people at that level would be like, are you insane? No, no way. So having your own podcast gives you the opportunity to also have mentors turn into friends. Like I've had that with so many of my guests that I've had come on, and we just vibe and we connect, and then it turns and blossoms into a friendship. It's really, truly amazing. Secondly, what we found was like having some people on my podcast, they did turn into client relationships, or existing clients came on my podcast and they got clients from coming on the show. That was transformational. So like the ripple effect gets to pay it forward. And also our audience gets to hear from a client where if our audience has been on the fence of like, I don't know, should I join some of Kimberly's programs? Like, private coaching, or like, should I jump in on that Ascension Authority audit? Like, what should I do? That allowed people to say, oh, it worked for this person. Oh, it worked for this, but maybe it'll work for me. So it helps open the door to possibility. So that's how we've leveraged Crown Yourself. We bring on existing clients or past clients. We bring on guests that I'm just fascinated to talk to. And I look at who would I love to have mentor me that I could have on to bring into my audience and ecosystem and teach me, in essence, for an hour. Like I would just had Sam Kukathos on my show, and he gifted me with a neuroresonance session on the podcast because I said, show me what you do. That's so magical that you're working with like some of the top visionary leaders in the world on what you do. And he did on the podcast, like today. It was the coolest thing. And that experience is such a gift. So then our other podcast, Communication Queens, when we started it, it was about like, we would have visibility quickies and longer form interviews with podcasters about how to grow your podcast. But I started to see in the podcasting industry that was a lot of circular conversation. Like there's already podcasts that are about how to grow your podcast and how to podcast better. And I was like, well, I'd like to focus it on like because after the success of my book, Make Every Podcast Want You, I had a lot of interest in people who were like, how did you achieve the success that you've had with your book? Like multiple gold literary awards, getting it on New York Times billboards, not a New York Times bestseller yet, but that's on the horizon. It's coming. Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah. And then not only that, but being able to have it not only get bestseller on Amazon, but then stay in the top 0.5% of books on Amazon for a week. Like that was extraordinary. And they're like, how did you get those results? And I was like, podcasts. So I said, instead of talking to podcasters about how to podcast, and it's this whole like podcast circular conversation, why don't I just interview authors and they'll get to talk about their book, but then I can also demonstrate what we do and how I think about podcast guesting to support them. And maybe they come and work with us. Maybe they just take that as like a bonus. Like I just had Jan Joy Hoeth on my podcast, and she wrote a great book about joy. I forget the whole title at this moment, but it was like Joy Unleashed or something. It was amazing. And from that conversation, she literally had the awareness of like, oh my gosh, I'm not talking about my book a lot on social media as I'm promoting it. I was like, yeah, girl. So that day she went out and posted about her book on social. And I was like, if that's all the impact that I get to have, and that leads to her having more sales and more people getting to touch her work, like that's such a gift. That's such an honor to be able to have had that impact. Like whether someone comes to work with me or not, like truly, I believe in reciprocity and I believe 100% in abundance. And I know it always comes back. And so like, I fully stand in my power of the worth of my services. And I also know that demonstrating on a podcast adds value to the guest. It adds value to the listeners. It adds value to the people who may be interested in joining us for our services, for communication queens, for helping them get booked on the right podcast and build out their podcast guesting strategy so that they're going on the right podcasts that lead to more book sales. So that's how we leverage the Communication Queen podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got one sort of overarching question left for you, and then I've got a few to end on yourself personally. So the last question that I've got from sort of an overarching communication standpoint is this. I'm wondering how entrepreneurs and business leaders can leverage sales language, but also come across as human-centric, because, sales and business is a people's business. You can be a great salesperson, but a lousy communicator when it comes to being human-centric.
Yeah.
So how do you marry the two and not sound so robotic and sales-focused? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Okay. It's very blunt. Can I curse on this?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Give a shit about people.
Yeah.
Like, I literally have it on it's a Post-it note that I have like on my ring light that I stare at every day. It says, secret to success, give a shit about people. Like, actually care. Actually care. Is your product or coaching program or book actually a right fit for them? Is that actually going to serve and support them? Or are you just adding to the noise of their life? Like, actually care about the person. Actually care if it's going to be of benefit. That is something that's so powerful. And ask questions. The best salespeople aren't the best talkers. They're actually the best listeners. They're actually the ones who can ask more prompting questions to see, like, is this an aligned match? Because if you get this pushy salesperson, you're going to get people buying and have buyer's remorse, and they'll have regret. And those people you don't want in your programs, because they are not fun and they will blame you for your results. For their results, it is awful. So if you are truly to be in integrity with selling, then communicate the value of what you do and stand behind it. Like, I've heard a lot of sales calls. I've even gone so far as listening to some of my clients' sales calls, and I've heard them when they back down from their pricing. So they'll be in the conversation. They'll have that coaching. They'll be coaching. They'll be expanding that person's possibility, and then suddenly the conversation comes down to the price, and they're like, oh, and the price is $10,000, and they're like almost apologizing for it. And I'm like, you need to back your belief system with your price so hard that, like, it's a no-brainer to you. Because if it's not a no-brainer how you've priced what you've priced to you, then who else is going to pay you for that? Like, people have to believe that you have certainty that you can deliver the services. If you're not certain in delivering just the price, that's a sign where people are like, I don't know. They may feel insecure in buying. Versus if you're like, hey, we worked together for 3 months. I'm so excited to have you on board. I know you said that scaling your business is an important desire for you at this season of your life. This is the reason why you've said this is important. These are your values that you stand for. I totally get, like, our core value at Crown Yourself is radical responsibility and ownership. I so value that you want to show up more authentically as a leader, that you want to be in that role of a visionary. And because of that, like, I would love to offer you an invitation into our Queen Bee program. This program is $15,000 for 3 months of coaching one-on-one with me, and I would be honored to be able to serve you through this. How does that sound for you?
That's quite the sales pitch, my friend. Absolutely.
And it's not something that is like, I'm not pushy. I'm not trying to be like, and I'm not apologizing either. Like a lot of women, and perhaps it's because as women specifically, we have only been able to make money in America for the past 200 years. So generationally, we do have some work to do on that. But backing down from that price, if you back down from that price and apologize for it, people aren't going to trust that you can actually deliver. So hold the standard. I remember the first time I said a $10,000 price tag. Oh my God, I was shaking. I was so nervous, and I just let the silence speak. I just held it. I was shaking, and I just allowed myself to be silent after I stated the price. I didn't apologize for it. I didn't question it. I didn't say like, is that okay? Is that okay? Like, is that okay that I charge that much for my services that I spent $250,000 to learn? Like, in education and really learning and mastering my craft over the past decade, like, is that okay? And if you can, it's up to you to back your belief system with the price. That's first and foremost. And secondly, the best part of your leadership comes with the objections. Because what happens is in a sales conversation, you're going to elevate their belief. They're going to start seeing what's possible. They're going to be like, oh yeah, I could see that. Oh yes. If I achieve this, then I would be able to do this in my life, and I would be able to take the kids on vacation. Oh my gosh. One of my clients was just able to take her son to Disney World or Disneyland. Like that was her vision. She said, I will know if this has worked if I can take my son to Disneyland. She came on my podcast, and it was in that moment that she was like, oh my God, I actually achieved that goal. I'm literally taking him. I think they're going in a couple weeks. Like, it was amazing to experience that moment of her goal being achieved and realized. But it was because, like, when she said that, I saw it for her, and I held the vision. I was like, absolutely, she's going to achieve that 100%. If in a sales conversation, you don't believe that they can achieve all the things that they say they want to achieve, it is not your job to sell. That would be inauthentic selling. That would be absolute incongruence, because as the salesperson, as the leader, you have to see that vision for them before they can. Sometimes they'll paint the picture, but if your product, your service can guide them to that reality, amazing. But if you can't see their goals for them and see them actually achieving it, not your job to sell to them. Because that is a misaligned sale. That is you just going in it for the money, because you are not the person to coach them or sell to them. If you can see their vision and you help build that vision up, and they see it and you see it, and then you name the price, what happens is then they come back down to earth, come back down to present circumstances. And they're no longer operating from their future self. They're no longer operating from who they can be. They're operating from their circumstances, which is what they're going to repeat if they keep doing the same dang thing. So then it's your job, again, as a leader, to guide them back up to that place of making decisions from their future self, from their vision, and supporting them in whatever decision they choose is best for them. That is conscious sales.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. I'm curious to end our conversation with a two-part question. I'm interested to know if you could go back and tell your 21-year-old self something about a lesson you've learned in your entrepreneurial journey that you've applied to your both personal and professional life. What would that lesson be, and how do you want your own personal and professional legacy to be defined, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
So for my 21-year-old self, my first response when you asked that question, I would be like, don't date that dude. But for my 21-year-old self, in business, I would say, keep that trust, keep your audacity, but also keep your humility. But I had a lot of audacity and courage when I was younger. That audacious, courageous version of me fell away a bit after my buyout. I was so scared of being, having more lawyers or legal issues or anything like that. And it really kept me playing small for a while. So I would definitely say keep your level of audacity, be bold, and go for it. Like, just go for it. Like that thing that you're going to, that thing that you're thinking about doing, most people won't remember, but you will remember if you did it. And I have had the privilege of speaking to people on their deathbed and listening to the amount of regret they had for the things that they didn't do. And I would much rather leave this world in a blaze of glory of here's all the things. And I came and I sucked the marrow out of life, as from that quote from Dead Poets Society. And I enjoyed life and I tried and I gave it a go. And I had peace and I had joy and I had love and I had fulfillment and I had success and I had, generational wealth and I shifted generational narratives for my family. Like that's what I want as my legacy. It's not just like, hey, did I make more revenue? It truly is holistic. Like if my kids are not fully okay as well, like, and not just financially okay, but like have the skill sets to have resilience. If they have the skill sets of greater communication, of love, of being compassionate human beings, of being caring, like all of that, and then business success and growth of impacting millions of lives, I'm so grateful for this life. Like that's so amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, my friend, tell me if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
If you love this episode and you love podcasts like this, like Kevin's, then be sure to subscribe to the Crown Yourself podcast. So you can go to crownyourself.com/podcast and subscribe on any of your favorite podcast platforms. And if you want to have more conscious conversations and you're an entrepreneur and you want to step into a new leadership realm, then head on over to crownyourself.com/roundtable and join us for our monthly virtual roundtable for conscious leaders and entrepreneurs who are stepping into another level of leadership and visibility. And lastly, if you like to figure out how to get booked on more podcasts and leverage podcasts for growing your business and your bank account, then head on over to makeeverypodcastwantyou.com and grab a copy of my book.
Well, absolutely. Well, my friend, no one will ever accuse you of not being ambitious, okay?
True.
And I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with both authenticity, vigor, and value, my friend. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope I, in some measure, have added, value to your life through this conversation. And I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
You are so welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an honor.